Mike Griffith here. Welcome to Baton Rouge, where tomorrow at Tiger Stadium, the number 2 ranked Georgia Bulldogs will play number 13 LSU here on the Bayou. Georgia, of course, 6-0 and 4-0 in the SEC. LSU 5-1, 2-1 in the league. Tigers coming off a difficult 27-19 loss at the Swamp last week. Here's a scary stat for you. Ed Orgeron has not lost back-to-back games since he's taken over as LSU's coach. And the Tigers have won 20 straight games in Tiger Stadium in the month of October. So a couple of crazy stats there for you. Of course, Georgia opened this game as an 8.5-point favorite. That line down to 7. A lot of people betting money that LSU will at least play Georgia close, if not upset the Georgia Bulldogs. So the mood here in Baton Rouge is starting to get frantic. There's a lot of Georgia fans here. Of course, I'm standing outside of the Maravich Assembly Center. That's what's on the other side of this camera. You see Tiger Stadium in the background, and below me, the Mike Tiger exhibit. Mike is on the prowl tonight. He's been stalking some Georgia fans. I'm not exaggerating. Following them, he looks upset, cross. He has his game face on, as did Ed Orgeron and all the other Tigers that I saw yesterday at the LSU indoor facility. I went over there and covered Coach O's post-practice press conference on Thursday, and I was able to ask questions about the Georgia Bulldogs. One thing I thought Orgeron said very interesting was that he has 2 different game plans for the Georgia offense. Much as Kirby likes to say that Jake Fromm and Justin Fields run the same offense, Ed Orgeron says it may be the same offense, but they run different plays out of it. So he's prepared for Jake, all the pre-snap reads that Jake can do, the shotgun, Georgia's pro-style attack. Jake Fromm is in there. He's prepared for Justin Fields, a little bit more RPO action perhaps, and even some options. So LSU on edge. Watch their players coming out of the facility. Nobody looked nervous. Everybody looked excited. Loud music was playing. They didn't look like a team that had a care in the world. They're probably very excited for a chance to have that immediate redemption after that loss to Florida. Georgia, meanwhile, they were challenged early on by their own head coach. Kirby Smart came out and said that any questions you may have about the Georgia defense would be answered in this football game, particularly the front 7. Now, you look at what Georgia's doing statistically, it's impressive against the run. But remember, everybody's been playing from behind. Georgia has not had a team within single digits of them in the second half of a football game this year. The closest game at the half was 20-10 at South Carolina. And Georgia scored 3 touchdowns in the third quarter and ended up blowing out South Carolina. Vanderbilt, worth noting, had 91 yards rushing in the first half. Of course, Jake Fromm and company with that beautiful 2-minute drive at the end of the half to go up by more than 2 scores. Vanderbilt had to abandon the run. If LSU can stay close, they're not going to want to abandon the run. You know, I asked Ed Orgeron about the physicality that Kirby Smart continues to talk about with LSU, and he said, you know, it's just as physical as it's ever been, except they're not going to run their offense with a fullback in front of the tailback. They'll do all the power plays. You'll still see double teams at the hole. You'll still see some big LSU running backs coming downhill at you. That's one thing Kirby Smart talked about was the size of the LSU players. I can attest to that. I saw those guys yesterday coming out one by one, coming out of that LSU facility. This is a big football team that LSU is getting ready to tackle. In fact, this is the first time I would say that Georgia has faced an opponent that has the same size and talent, at least on the front line. I don't think that LSU has the quality of depth that Georgia has, but their starters, from a talent standpoint, will be more on par with Georgia than anyone else the Bulldogs have faced so far. Of course, Georgia getting ready to go into a very difficult 4-game stretch. I know the Georgia players and Kirby Smart very focused on this game, and then they have a bye week. But after that, they're going to play Florida at Jacksonville. Then they have to play at Kentucky at Kroger Field in Lexington. And then they come home and play Auburn in what's always a difficult matchup in the South's oldest rivalry. So this is the beginning of a very difficult stretch for Georgia, although they don't look at it that way. They're just looking at it as this one game, and then they get a week off. Georgia, of course, has some bumps and bruises. We know that Ben Cleveland is out. Of course, Ben was the starting right guard the first 4 games of the season before he was injured at Missouri. Of course, Cade Mays filled in for Cleveland most recently at right guard. Cade doing a little reserve work earlier this season when Andrew Thomas was out at left tackle against South Carolina. Now Andrew back, the highest graded offensive lineman in the country, offensive tackle in the country, according to Pro Football Focus. And Georgia with the top graded line in the country. You can't say enough about Sam Pittman. I think he's done a wonderful job. I think that's really been the heart of the Georgia offense. I did a story you can read on DogNation.com, my mid-season report card, and the offensive line had a very high grade. Not the highest grade on the team. That went to a different position group, but a very high grade. You may want to check that out. I know BA and Jeff Chip, they've done some great live work for you from New Orleans. I'm here in Baton Rouge. Beautiful. The weather's great. There's a little bit of a breeze. Tomorrow, expected to be about 84 degrees at kickoff. That stadium's going to be rocking. I just checked StubHub, saw where you can get a pair of tickets for $137 each in the upper level. That was the cheapest tickets I saw. Lower level will be close to $200 for a pair of tickets. Not sure what's going to happen with the demand as kickoff approaches, but that's where it's at on StubHub right now. I mentioned Ben Cleveland's injury. Need to update you. David Marshall, not expected to make this trip. David injured his foot in that victory over Vanderbilt. Jay Hayes, the transfer from Notre Dame, is going to have an opportunity to step up with David Marshall out. Of course, David splits time with Jonathan Ledbetter at defensive end. You know, this Georgia front seven, can't say it enough times, they're going to be tested tomorrow. LSU is going to try and power it. If LSU is successful running the football against Kirby's base defense, which is a two-deep safety look, Georgia's been very careful not to allow any big play. They've made you earn everything, and it's because they've stayed in that base defense with too high, as Ed Orgeron calls it, or two safeties deep. Georgia's only allowed 5 passes longer than 20 yards this season to be completed against them. But if LSU is successful running against that 6-man box, you can expect for Kirby to drop one of those safeties down close to the line of scrimmage, because Kirby Smart will not allow a team to run on Georgia. He's going to do whatever it takes. So far, Georgia's been able to get by with a lot of 6-man boxes too deep. Ed Orgeron says when you've got a defense that can stop the run, playing too deep, that's an excellent defense. So far, Georgia's done that. But, again, the schedule gets tougher, and that's something to look for. See where Georgia's safeties are lining up. If LSU has success running the football early, Kirby and Mel Tucker are going to have to adjust and take some more chances and get a little bit more aggressive on the back end. That, of course, opens up the potential for big plays, something that Georgia doesn't like. Kirby wants teams to burn it, take long, sustained drives, patient quarterback, teams that don't commit penalties and get behind the chains, teams that don't turn the ball over. That's what it's taken so far for teams to move the ball in Georgia, and nobody has been able to do that beyond the first half. As we've seen, Georgia has not had a close football game. This could be a 4-quarter game if LSU is able to execute. LSU pretty much beat themselves at Florida. 3 turnovers down there, something that LSU looks to clean up. Ed Orgeron said yesterday they had a very physical practice on Tuesday. He feels very good about where his LSU football team is at right now. I know Kirby Smart and the Georgia players have been locked in. You know, Kirby has done a really nice job, and so have the players, of taking it game by game by game. Even when everyone was talking big about South Carolina earlier this year, the Georgia players did not get caught up in it. They didn't let the lion out of the cage, so to speak, which is to say they weren't going to get overly excited early in the week. They saved it for game day, and you saw the smackdown they put on South Carolina and Columbia. Now, this week has been a little different. Kirby has gone ahead and gassed his guys up a little bit. He's challenged them with those comments about the defense. He's told them they need to knuckle up. He's even challenged the Georgia fans, saying that the LSU fans are second to none. And we're going to see how the Georgia fans respond in that stadium. I know a lot of them are down here to party. I know there's 10 or 12,000 Georgia fans that are down here between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. The question is, how much red and black will we see inside of Tiger Stadium? Kirby Smart has challenged the fans. He's challenged his team because Kirby knows that it could take special performance to come out of that Tiger Den with a win. Let me tell you, this is a hungry LSU team. Back or to the wall for LSU. They still control their own destiny in the West. Don't underestimate what that means. And they're playing in front of their home crowd. LSU having a much better season than anyone would have imagined Ed Orgeron, a guy that we all thought was on the hot seat, came out at the beginning of the year, put a beat down on Mark Richt in Miami in that game in Arlington, Texas. And then they went to Auburn as a 10-point underdog and beat Auburn Tigers, a very physical football team. And yes, I know Auburn's coming off a loss against Mississippi State, but the Auburn team that LSU played thought they were supermen. So LSU already with 2 great victories. And while Georgia's perfect record looks impressive, probably the most impressive win is at Missouri, 43-29. And even in that game, the Georgia players will tell you they did not feel good about it. Missouri rushed for 161 yards against Georgia at Missouri. They scored 4 rushing touchdowns, which really upset Kirby Smart. They averaged 5.3 yards on first down carry. That can't happen tomorrow in Tiger Stadium. So you're going to see Georgia Bulldogs step up. Young Jordan Davis, the freshman nose guard, a guy who emerged, had a great 4th down stop against Vanderbilt. He's going to be playing at the nose behind Julian Rochester. We'll see how much Jordan plays. We'll see what Ledbetter does. We're going to see what the linebackers do. Natrez Patrick says they think it will take their best game to win here. They're looking forward to that. I got a story with Juwan Taylor for tomorrow. Taylor, much like Jake Fromm, he said he doesn't care about Mike the Tiger. He doesn't care about the storied tradition. They just want to play football. These Georgia guys, I'm looking at my watch at 5 o'clock. They should be getting inside that stadium at any time now for a walkthrough, getting themselves familiar with the environment. This will be the first time since 2008 that Georgia has played in Tiger Stadium. And as it stands, under the current SEC scheduling model, Georgia won't be back here again until 2030. 12 years. We talked to Kirby Smart about that after the Vanderbilt game. And Kirby, to his credit, I thought took the stand. I thought was big time. You know, he didn't look at what was best for himself. He didn't look at what was best for the SEC. He said, in the interest of the players and in the interest of the fans, the SEC should go to a 9-game schedule. Now, Alabama coach Nick Saban has said that, and Auburn coach Gus Malzahn has also said that. And I asked Ed Orgeron about that yesterday, and Ed said he would be fine with that, going to a 9-game league schedule. Now, what would that do? Well, you'd probably lose one of these bye games. Maybe Georgia wouldn't play Austin Peay and Middle Tennessee State. Maybe Georgia would consider dropping Georgia Tech from the schedule. So I'm not clear on why you'd want to play that game the week before the SEC title game. It's an antiquated schedule that Georgia has. I understand the tradition, but that Georgia Tech game was placed there before there was an SEC title game. And the last thing you want to do is have to play your rival the week before you play a conference championship game. That's something Greg McGarrity's got to look at. That's something they've got to consider moving. At least if you don't drop it altogether, move it to the start of the schedule. You don't need that game the week before. But getting back to Kirby's point, you know, he says this is a special trip. And he remembers from his playing career, you know, it was 1998, Kirby Smart was an all-SEC safety for Georgia. And the Bulldogs beat LSU 28-27 in Tiger Stadium. Kirby had 2 pass breakups and 12 tackles on that day. And you better believe it's a game that he remembers. And he knows that his players are going to make a memory out there on that field tomorrow. They can say what they want. They can say it doesn't matter. But ultimately, the pageantry, the color, the stadium, the environment, this is where a lot of people are going to make memories, both on the field and in the stands. So many Georgia fans traveled to this game. It's a tougher ticket than the Notre Dame game last year. As I understand it, the donors had to donate $99,000 for the right to buy a ticket to this game from the university to sit with the Georgia alumni. Now, I talked to a lot of Georgia fans here. They're going to be sitting with the LSU fans list. LSU fans, great. They know how to party. They have a good time. There's going to be a lot of tailgating. It's a day game. I don't think the crowd's going to get too ugly. The Georgia fans I saw, a lot of them were walking around with LSU. A lot of friends that know one another, that have been looking forward to this matchup. And, you know, really applaud Kirby Smart for taking that stance on the 9-game schedule. I understand, you know, Greg Sankey's the commissioner, and as Kirby said, ultimately the conference office makes that decision. Kirby said, it's not my decision. He was just giving his 2 cents. You know, it's up to Greg Sankey to do what makes money, but at some point, you got to consider the interest of the fans and the players, and Kirby mentioned that. He said, you know, you look at the attendance and where it's dropped off at some places, And one of the ways to rectify that would be with a 9-game conference schedule. It wouldn't be perfect. You play 5 away and 4 home. It wouldn't be completely even in that sense, but it would be more even when you consider the opponents that you play. I mean, Georgia's annual opponent is Auburn. Alabama's annual opponent is Tennessee. LSU's annual opponent is Florida. What about these other teams and their annual opponents? Not the best annual opponents out there. What does South Carolina have? Arkansas every year? I'm not even sure who Kentucky has from the West. Maybe Ole Miss or someone like that. I'm not clear, but it certainly puts Georgia at a disadvantage having to play Auburn every other year. And then add to it where that Auburn game falls on the schedule, typically right before Georgia Tech, or at least in the month of November, and you're playing Georgia Tech and Auburn on the road in the same season. Now, you get them at home in the same season as well, but those seasons where you got to travel to play Tech and Auburn on the road, 2 rivalry games on the road, that's tough, and you really never really get Florida at home. You know, I guess Jacksonville's considered a neutral site, even though it's in the state of Florida. As I understand it, the Gators may not have to leave the state of Florida the rest of this season. How much of an advantage is that? So a lot to think about with scheduling, but wrapping it up from here, getting back, talking about this football game, keys to the game. The great thing about Georgia is they got Plan A and Plan B. Saw that against Tennessee. Jeremy Pruitt did a great job scheming up Jake Fromm, as he should. He recruited a lot of these guys. He had Kevin Shear on the staff last year. They knew how to game plan. They sacked Jake 3 times. They forced 2 fumbles. The longest pass they allowed was 23 yards. And so Kirby went to Justin Fields, and that really created a spark in the second quarter. That could happen tomorrow. Jake's coming off a great game, by the way. His best game of the season against Vanderbilt. So Georgia's primed and good to go. We know Plan A will be Jake. That's who they'll start, that conventional offense. But if things slow down a little bit, if the offense sputters, you know that Justin Fields is in the bullpen, and he is absolutely dynamic. I tried to explain to people just what a weapon Justin Fields is. You have to see him to believe, and maybe even in person. And the Georgia fans that have been to the games, they've seen Justin run through those tackles when he needs to, and they've seen that strong NFL talent in his arm. Conversely, on defense, Kirby's got to stop the run. If they can do it playing too deep, this game will belong to Georgia. But if Kirby's got to drop the safety down and play a 7-man box, that opens up the possibility for some big plays, and it really tests that Georgia secondary, which I think is the best unit on the team. So I encourage you to go to DogNation.com, read the story, read the midseason report card, check out the Dog Nation forum. If you want to message with me direct, I'm always in there. Centel's always in there. I know Chip and BA will be in there. We'll be coming to you live tomorrow from LSU. I appreciate you joining us on this. I'm going to throw it back to the studio on Michael Carvel on the Dog Nation Facebook page. Everybody, have a great Friday night. We'll talk to you tomorrow.